Hello, everyone, and good morning, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, maybe you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us is another author making their official debut here on the show. Now, our guest today is a Southern small town romance novelist from Mississippi whose stories are filled with heart, resilience, and the charm of country life. A proud mother, grandmother, and wife, she draws inspiration from her rural roots and the close-knit communities that shaped her upbringing. Her love for storytelling began in middle school when she first created characters and crafted stories that would one day grow into full-length novels. Before becoming a full-time caregiver for a disabled family member, she spent 13 years as a mathematics teacher in southern Mississippi, where she also encouraged her students' love of reading by sharing books from her own collection. Today, she channels her lifelong passion for literature and writing into romance novels that celebrate family, love, and the beauty of small town life. Her books are available on Kindle for readers who enjoy heartfelt stories. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to our guest today, Holleigh Rae. Holleigh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you here on the show, Holleigh. And honestly, I'm so excited to talk to you about your book. And before we do, as a little icebreaker question, is there a little known fact that not a lot of people may know about you?
Um, that Holleigh Rae is not my real name.
All right. Nice. Very, very nice. It is a pen name or pseudonym,
Pen
I
name.
imagine.
It's a pen name.
Nice. Very nice. Well, it's a very, very nice and lovely pen name.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, Holleigh, welcome to the Wandering Scribe. I'm so excited to have you here on the show. Now, again, thank you so much for sending me over your book to read as well to get prepared for our interview. And without spoiling too much of your book, what can you tell readers as a general overview of your story?
It's Eagle is a contemporary faith-based military romance. Yes, a lot of words there. Um, Nathan Ward is a Marine sniper, and his foster sister and best friend's little sister, Chris, he's always protected her. And he felt that he should be because, they grew up together, they were foster siblings, but there was always something a little more.
Mm.
And now that she has grown up and she's graduated from high school, he has to decide if he can juggle her as more than a friend and his chosen profession as a sniper in Force Recon.
Mm, nice. Very, very nice. So, before we dive into the behind the scenes, Holly, let's talk a little bit more about you and how your passion for the written word came about. So, let's start at the very beginning. What would you say was your definitive aha moment that really put you on this path?
Well, as you mentioned before, I started writing in middle school with my two best friends. We would pass the notebook back and forth, and each of us write a little bit. It was kind of time to get through boring classes and stuff. But what really motivated me to get, I'm sorry, to write my first novel, complete novel, was when my little brother joined the Marines. He graduated the Sunday. Well, we came home from San Diego the Sunday before 9/11
Mm,
happened on Tuesday. And he had graduated boot camp, and they sent him to Afghanistan shortly thereafter. We were very, very close, and it was hard for me, being the big sister, to let go. So I wrote Eagle through that time to help me deal with everything because I couldn't talk to him on a daily basis. I couldn't protect him. I didn't know where he was. And it was really hard.
Hmm. I imagine when you began writing the story that it definitely brought up a lot of emotions and conflictions.
Yes, it did. And I wrote it back in between 2001 and 2006 was the time frame that I wrote it, but I didn't want to share it with the world for many years.
Mm, I understand. I understand. So once you finished writing the initial draft of your book, Holly, what really surprised you about writing this book in the sense of being as a passion project before realizing that, oh, I can actually do something with my passion for writing and build, my presence as an author?
Well, what I want to do is I want to touch people's lives and let them know that they're not the only ones that have gone through different traumas, different life lessons, as you will. I want them to know that they're not shouting into the void, that there is someone else out there going through this same thing. And there is a happily ever out there if they want it. There is a silver lining, there is sunshine. And when I let a friend of mine read Eagle, and she told me, she said, you need to publish this. There's more people out there that needs to read this. They need to hear this. And so I did. And it's been great.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. So, speaking of Eagle, let's talk now about the behind the scenes of its creation. So, as you were planning out the story, did you have a rough outline you wanted to follow, or did the story come about organically?
No, I don't write. My characters write. I'm just the one that puts it on paper. I don't outline. I don't know where the story is going when I sit down and write. I can pick up a piece of paper and a pen and write, and whatever they tell me is what I write. I can sit down at the computer and whatever they tell me, I write. I don't plan anything. I don't even
Nice.
plan their names.
The names just come about naturally.
They do.
Nice. And that actually kind of goes into another question regarding characters for a moment. So, as the characters were coming about, as you say that, the characters write the story and you are just, putting them down on paper, so to speak. How did you make sure that the characters not only felt organic, but that it made sense for characters like these to exist in the story that you were trying to write?
Um, I don't think I've ever thought about that. It has just come out, and there's not much that I've had to tweak. I've had to go back and describe places, but the actual characters, they give me everything. I don't have to think about what color this person's eyes are or anything like that. The characters give me everything.
All right. All right. Now, going back to the writing aspect of the book, Do you have a routine that you follow or a ritual or not necessarily a strict regiment?
I I don't. I don't have a strict regiment or anything. When the overwhelming desire to write or even depression kicks in, that's when I know I've got to write and I've got to get it out.
Mm. All right. Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier, Holly, about sort of like your goal with this book as what your as your friend mentioned that, it needs to be published. It needs to be there for people to let them know that they are not alone and they are not alone in the same suffering or in the same emotional turmoil. So, beyond that, what is also your promise you're making, not just to yourself, but to your prospective readers?
My promise is to be my authentic self when I'm writing and to always be available in my social media, direct messages, or email, to be the listening ear that someone needs. And if they're asking for help that I cannot provide, that I will help them find someone who can.
Nice, amazing, and very well spoken, Holly. Now, as you also said earlier, you began writing Eagle around 2001 throughout 2006. And during that point, at what moment in your journey as an author, and also possibly much later, did you let friends and family know that you were embarking on this journey with this project at the time?
Well, Eagle has is a book that I re-released recently.
Ah,
So
okay.
when I released it in 2009, I let my family and friends know that I released it. When I re-released it in 2025, I didn't tell but a very few. And the reason for that is because I wanted to release it under my pen name that I released some other books under. I wanted it all to be under that pen name. And there is a reason I write under the pen name. I also write smut under the pen
Mm,
name, also, which this one is not. But I didn't want to have to keep up with two different social medias and all of that. So I just decided to put it all under one thing. And I'm not embarrassed to be an author or what I write, but certain people in my family would be embarrassed of my other books. So I haven't told a whole lot of people that it's me.
ah, all right. That makes sense. That makes sense. All right. And actually, still within this topic of friends and family, when you initially released Eagle back in '09, what were the reviews like by readers and commenters?
In '09, it flopped.
Oh,
Yes, I actually went traditional in '09, and the company that I chose to work with, they didn't help like they promised. They made a lot of promises that they did not follow through with. So I bought my rights back to Eagle. And when I re-released it in 2025 is when it found its traction.
nice. That's good. That's very, very good to hear. And that's something that we're going to be talking about much later when we get to the business side of being an author. Now, as our first fan question of the interview, Holly, one of my viewers would like to know, when writing Eagle, what was your favorite scene to write as well as the most difficult scene to flesh out?
Um, my favorite scene to write was probably the scene where Josh Chris's brother tricks her into thinking that a tradition that they had for when they graduated was being changed. And she got really upset about it and really mad, and her southern temper came out. So that was really fun to write. And the hardest one was to ones, being plural, was when they had to leave for deployment.
Mm. All righty. And that is actually something that we're going to touch on a little bit later, and especially when we talk about, emotions and when it comes to writing. But before we get to that, there's also another one I want to talk to you about, Holleigh, and it's probably one that is probably the most impactful when it comes to us authors, and it's a double attack or double threat, as I like to call it, and that is the writer's block and imposter syndrome. We are always going to experience both, sometimes one after the other, and it can be very detrimental to a person's state of being creative. So, for you, Holleigh, when you were initially writing Eagle, how did you handle the writer's block? And going forward, when you got the rights back in 2025, when promoting it now as an indie author, how did you deal with the imposter syndrome at that point in your life?
Um, Writer's block, I just put everything down and walk away. Because with me, if my characters are not speaking to me, then I can't write. I don't write. It's kind of strange because I don't just sit down and write what I feel. I sit down and write what the crazy voices are shouting in my head, and yes, sometimes I have to research this or that to find out more, but mostly it's just writing what they're saying. So if they quit talking, I quit writing. So there's not really anything that I can do for that except to wait for them. And what I do is I go to another book. If I have other characters shouting in my head, I switch to their story.
Mm.
And with the imposter syndrome, it's been hard because it did flop in 2009, but I have had a lot of very positive feedback being in the Indie Authors United group on Instagram with Lisa, who you have recently interviewed.
Yes, that is correct.
Her and the authors in that group, plus some other amazing authors that I've met, have really boosted me up. And they've read my book. They have given me honest feedback, whether it's been negative or positive. They have helped me. But mostly, Eagle has been positive because of where I'm coming from. I'm not just writing a love story. I am taking what I went through and putting it on paper, and I'm writing about the truth of how their families are right there with them. I've had retired and active military who have read it and come back and said, okay, I've never read one like this, because you go into what our family is feeling. It's not just the romance.
Mm.
It's not just the military missions. It's not just about Nate and Chris. It's about the whole family.
Right.
And it's the beginning of a series. It's the beginning of a 4-part series. And they are actually all out. Almost all out. I still have one more that's coming out soon.
Nice. Well, congratulations. That is a huge
Thank you.
achievement.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Holly. And now we get into probably the next segment, and that is, of course, the reflective segment. And to start off with this one, we're going to begin with a very loaded and heavy question, Holly. So, and that question talks on, what does it mean to be an indie author in the digital age? Because the industry has greatly changed. You know, indie authors 20 years ago would seem unheard of at this time or at that time. But now, more than ever, indie authors are dominating the publishing industry. Yes, traditional authors are still going to be at the head of the food chain, but indie authors have closed the gap significantly. And in some cases, depending on the genre and year, have possibly overtaken a lot of traditional authors. And, that comes down to, social media, networking, platforming, connecting, and all that stuff. But with the digital age, it also comes with its own share of challenges. Social media is very taxing, very emotionally draining. We leave ourselves open and exposed to a lot of the negative sides. It's a double-edged sword. And especially when it comes to social media and it comes to promoting our books, this is where we kind of fall into, and we're going to touch upon this a little bit later when we get to the business side of themes versus tropes. We see a lot of books that have sort of like the trope map of what can get people interested, but not a lot of, what's the story about. And I'm assuming that maybe at one point in your journey as an author, you may have had commenters saying that, oh, maybe you should make the book like this, so that way it can appeal to these readers or something like that. So I'm very curious. With all that said, what has disciplined you to still stay true to your goals and objectives and morals as the author of this incredible series and your other books?
I do not have an editor that tells me what to do. I am my own editor. I do have a few friends that beta and alpha read for me, and they do find plot holes, spelling, grammar, punctuation mistakes. And they sometimes they do say, "Hey, maybe you should do this or maybe you should do that." But being indie in today's society, you do not have to make those changes. If you're trad, you have to make the changes for them to publish your book.
Mm-hmm.
And being indie, you do not. And that's what I really like about being an indie author right now is that I have total control. I make my own covers. I make my own maps if I need one. I make my own social media posts, my own graphics. I do everything because I want total control.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Yes, absolutely. Very, very true. And again, that's something we're going to be touching on when we get to the business side of being authors. But before we get to that, there was another topic I really want to hear your thoughts on, and that is this discussion of whether or not we are leading towards a golden age of authors or leaning towards a AI cyber dark age. And the reason I bring this up is that when I began my journey as an author, it was around the height of the pandemic back in 2020. And since then, I've interviewed a lot of authors on the show. In fact, just last year, a lot of the authors that I've had on the show started their career around the same time as I did. And this has sparked a debate of whether or not we are in a golden age of authors because of the new voices in the industry. But as things have, wind down a little bit and everything sort of been settled, there's now a debate of, well, are we still in a golden age or are we transitioning towards more so of an iron age of reading and writing and authors, or to the far extreme, a cyber dark age with generative AI at the head. Because a lot of books now that are on the market are made with generative AI. And a lot of authors are very vocal about how, while AI is a tool and should be used as a tool, generative AI has no place in the creative process because it creates a false sense of creativity and mass produces everything, but it lacks that human aspect. And I would like to hear your thoughts on this, Holly.
Um, I agree that if a book is totally written AI, that it cannot have the human emotions because they are not human. I agree 100% with that. My problem with authors saying no AI, no AI is because, okay, you don't want AI, then turn off your grammar, spelling, and punctuation check.
Mm-hmm.
That's AI.
That is.
I do not use AI to write my books. I do not use AI to come up with my cover photos. I do not. I am not saying it's right or it's wrong for someone else. It is not for me to judge you. It is not for me to judge anyone else. You know, do I like people using AI? I don't care. That's between them and their publisher. Am I going to use AI? No, except to check my spelling, check my punctuation, check my grammar. And sometimes I may say, okay, Google, what's another word for red? Have you ever used that? That's AI.
That is true.
And
That's absolutely true.
a lot of authors are jumping on the no AI bandwagon. Well, you need to quit using Google to look up stuff. You need to quit using spell check and all that if you don't want to use AI.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my thoughts. I may get a lot of people mad at me there, but now, do I think it's right for people to use Gemini, Chat GPT to write their books? No. Do I think it's okay for them to jump into one of them and say, okay, I'm having trouble describing the color black in more ways. Can you help? No, I don't have a problem with that because that's just like using a thesaurus. That's
Yes.
just like using thesaurus in Word.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's just my thoughts on it. Do I think that AI is taking over the industry? Um, Not as much as I think people are saying. And the reason I'm saying that is because we are letting the readers know as authors, hey, look for this, look for that. If you start reading a book and there's no human emotions talked about, it's probably written by AI. Do you really want to give someone money that wrote it with a computer that had no thought process in it? And letting the readers know that it is happening and what to look for is gonna ultimately benefit us, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. 100%, Holly. That is very well spoken. And actually reminds me of a similar sentiment that another guest I had on the show said, that you can use AI like Gemini and ChatGPT as a brainstorming session. If you're stuck
Correct.
with an idea, it's like, I need an idea for a new book. ChatGPT and Gemini can easily do that, but you have to write it yourself. You can't use
Correct.
a program to do it. So, In that regard, ChatGPT and Gemini are very useful. But when it comes to, again, writing the work itself, it has to be you first and foremost. And now that kind of perfectly segues now into the business side of being an author. So, as an icebreaker question for this segment, Holleigh, when you got the rights back to your book, Eagle, back in 2025 and began promoting it as an indie author, what really surprised you about that aspect of being an indie marketer? And is there anything you would have done differently?
Um, I had a lot of books sitting on the shelf collecting dust, and I did not know what I was doing. So I just typed them all up and put them on Kindle, on KDP. That was it. And then I sat here and I was like, okay, now what? And then I started getting on threads and I
Mm,
was watching people what they did and having to put so much time and effort into promoting myself really shocked me. I don't know why, but it did because when I released Eagle in '09, the social media was not there like it is
mm,
today. And so it was a learning process. What I
mm.
wish I would have known then is not to just release them. Have a plan. Have people read them. Have beta readers. Have alpha readers. Set up with some friends that will help promote your book, that will share your posts. I have a friend, Ann Purdue. She writes the same genre as I do, and it was instant kinship. And anytime we see each other's posts, we share them on whatever social media we're on. And I think Lisa touched on this too: is find your community.
Yes, 100%.
That is something that I did not do, and I wish I would have before I even hit publish on KDP. I wish I would have found the friends that I've made on Threads and the Indie Authors United group on Instagram. I really wish I would have met them prior to getting started. That way, I could have learned more and hit the ground running instead of backpedaling.
All right. All right. And now, kind of on this topic of the audience, I'm really intrigued to hear your thoughts on this, Holleigh, especially um, as I've talked with a lot of people on the show that when it comes to writing our books, we are the target audience first and foremost. But when we go about publishing it, that's when we have to realize, okay, who exactly are we writing for and who is the audience? Now, I've talked to a lot of authors who don't consider the audience because they just want to write a good story. Or they may not even consider the readership, what age of readers that are going to enjoy a story like this. And thirdly, there's also another thing we find ourselves dealing with, this equilibrium of understanding the genre that we're writing in, but also being true to ourselves as authors. As you mentioned earlier, Eagle, it is a romance book or has a romance plot in it, but that's not the main factor. That's not what hooks readers into your story. It is a story about family and following their journey through this incredible and possibly impossible event. And as authors, we don't want to write a story that is so familiar that it's going to be seen as a knockoff version, but not something that's too um original that's going to be seen as something that's confusing, if that makes sense.
Right.
So again, this balancing act. So for you, Holleigh, did you have a good idea of your audience when you got the rights back in 2025? And what has been the challenge going back in time a little bit of balancing those two? Or did you not even consider those two things at the time and just wrote Eagle as a story that you were passionate about?
Well, honestly, I didn't think of an audience when I wrote Eagle. I wrote it for myself. I wrote it to help me get through those tough times. When I released it in 2025, I knew that it was a genre hopping story. Um, I did not realize how much it did hop genres or tropes or themes, whatever you want to call it, um, until I started getting feedback. And that's when I realized, you know, I wrote this as a tribute. I released this as a tribute to my brother and the 13.5% of veterans who brought the war home with them and
Mm.
could not let it go, who ended up turning to self-harm, self-medicating, accidental overdoses like my brother did in 2017. And there are so many stories out there that follows that line. And no, that is not in an Eagle anywhere. I didn't talk about any of that, but there is PTSD. There is missions. There's those quiet, bless your heart moments from the
Mm.
South, and it is family. And so, my readers now who I want to hear this story are the sisters of the ones that left, are the ones that deployed, are the brothers of the ones that deployed, are the mothers, the fathers, the best friends, the whoever you are that had a loved one that deployed, daughters, sons. I want them to know that this book is for you. It is not a girly romance novel. Yes, girls, yes, women, it does have that romance in it, trust me. But that's not all it is. It's not, oh, they're all sitting there just kissing on each other all the time. No, Chris is a true Southern woman that is not going to stand for it. She puts them in their place real quick. So it's genre hopping. It's
Mm.
every time I sit down to try to make a tropes list, I'm like, okay, what trope am I going to talk about today? Because there's so many. There's the brother's best friend. There's the military. There's the friends to lovers. There's the age gap, which it's only 4 years, but with him being in the military, there's a wider emotional, mental maturity age gap, and it's hard when you write something like this to find your actual readers when you first release it because you think it's going to be one thing and then it's going to end up being something totally different. And I hope I answered your question somewhere in there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now we're going to go into some rapid fire fan questions. So, beginning with the first one, in your opinion, Holleigh, using Eagle as a guide, which of the five physical senses is the most difficult to showcase in storytelling?
That's a hard one. Um, for me, I'd have to pick two that ties. Um, smell and hearing.
I've gotten a lot of smell from a lot of other guests. Hearing, not as much. So I like that. Touch is probably the one that a lot of people have said on the show, but I like how there's a little differentiation between each guest.
Right. And hearing because everybody hears something differently, just like everybody smells something differently. I can be standing in a room and my husband will be standing right next to me and I'll be like, "Did you hear that?" He's like, "Hear what?" And I can hear it, but he can't, or I'll hear like a child giggling sound and he'll hear a dog barking. It's just it's according to what your brain interprets, the sound. I can't say what you're hearing but the sound that's made, your brain, everyone's brain interprets a little differently. Just like smell, just like touch, just like sight.
Yeah.
And so smell and hearing are would be a tie for me to try to write.
All right. All right. Next one. Ooh. Okay. Now this is for you as a reader. As a reader, what is your favorite overrated trope and your favorite underrated trope?
Oh gosh, my favorite overrated. Um, best friend's brother.
Nice. Very nice.
Underrated would probably be, oh gosh. You've stumped me on this one.
Yeah, I when it comes to the underrated tropes, that's probably the most difficult one people have a hard time answering because there's a lot of tropes that some people will argue are overrated, but not a lot of ones that would be seen as underrated. Let me reword it. Underappreciated. Well, no, it's kind of the same thing.
Right. Um, probably, oh gosh, I still can't think of one.
Well, the one that I can think of, let's say, is like enemies to lovers is probably the biggest one that I can think of. Not saying that's underrated, but that's just a trope in of itself.
Yeah,
Best friends to lovers.
right.
Uh, found family is definitely a trope.
Yes, found family is one that I write a lot about that I don't see a whole lot. I really don't. And I love reading that. I
All
love
right,
found family because I have found family. I have more found family than I do blood family in my personal life.
all
So,
right. That's a good one. That's a good one. And now another little fun question. There's a two-parter, Holly. So, if Eagle had a soundtrack or song that paired with the overall message of the story, what song would that be?
it actually has one.
Oh, all right.
My cousin just released a song about my brother, and the name of it is Kings of the Woods, and you
Ooh,
can
that's a
find
good
it on
title.
Apple, Spotify. He's got it on YouTube, and it's under Brian M.E. White on Apple, and just Brian White on YouTube.
Nice. All
And so
right. I'll make sure
that's
to link
it.
that.
He um he wrote about him and my little brother because we were all very close. You know how he misses my brother and how they grew up riding four wheelers in the pines of Mississippi and aggravating me, and then how they both fought fires after 9/11. My brother going to Afghanistan, and my cousin was a firefighter. So he writes about that, and then about the what my brother brought home from the war with him. So it
Mm,
really it goes along with the whole theme of the family hurts too.
nice. Well, as I said, I'll make sure to link it down below in the description so people can go and check it out. And as a
Thank you.
follow up, you're welcome. And as a follow up to this question, as for the characters in the book Eagle, Holleigh, if they had a theme song, what theme song would it be?
Chris would be Mississippi Girl by Faith Hill.
I've only heard a little bit of
Definitely.
that song, but that's a pretty good one. That's a good choice.
You'll have to go look it up, or Wild One by Faith Hill. You'll have to go look those up. Um, I've never really thought about the rest of the characters. Um, a song for them, and my mind is going blank.
And that's no
So I'm
problem.
sorry.
No problem. No problem. And probably one of my favorite fan questions to ask authors is if your book was adapted into a TV series or film, who would the director be and which actors would you cast to play the main leads?
You ask the hard questions, don't you?
Can't
I
help it.
don't really know a lot of the popular actors and actresses right now or any of the directors anymore. I don't follow that as much. Um have you seen Heartland?
Yes, yes, I have.
Amy and Ty would be Chris and Nate.
Ooh, that's a good one. That is a very good one.
Or um the Robin Carr movie, Virgin River.
Again, another good one. That's a good one too.
Yes, those two, the director and the actors and actresses, they would fit right into Chris and Nate.
Nice. Very, very nice, Holly. Now, before we get to the final questions of this amazing author interview, there was something I wanted to talk about, and that is, of course, networking and finding one's tribe as an indie author. Now, as you mentioned earlier in the interview, you and Lisa are part of a engagement group on social media for indie authors. You guys have a large group of indie authors who have come together to help one another. And you have a website helping not only promote the community, but also bring a sense of awareness as indie authors. For
Yes.
you, Holly, what was it like being a part, or should I say, what is it like to be a part of a community that really knows the struggles that you go through as a fellow indie author? And how important is it for authors in general to find their tribe?
Oh, it is very important because I felt like I was just shouting into the void and no one was seeing my posts until I found, and it's not just the people in the group. I have a few that aren't in the group that have really stepped up and for me and I have for them, but the group, I can jump in the group, any of us can, and be like, okay, I'm having a bad day. This is what's going on. And bam, they're right there. If they're on, or if they come on later, they will comment and try to help us find whatever it is we need. I've had some say, hey, I can make this graphic for you because as you said earlier, I am the primary caregiver to my disabled son.
Mm,
And if I don't have time that day to make something and I need it out, I have people that will jump in and say, okay, here's a graphic for you, or here, let me share one of your posts for today. That way you've got some activity. And it's just it's amazing the support you get. And if you are new to the indie author community, go on Threads. Just make a post. Don't stop if nobody answers. It took me 3 months to make one friend,
mm-hmm.
but once I did, it's been amazing. One of those friends, um, actually is the one that invited me to the group, Neelam Dabas. She's from India, and she somehow found the Any Authors United group, and she invited me, and that's where I met Lisa, and she's been great. Um, we've actually exchanged phone numbers, and we talk just about every day, all day, just about different things. And until you find that person or that group of people, you're going to think you're alone, and you're not. It's very important for you to find your tribe. And if you're looking, find Lisa on IG, find me on IG, direct message us. We'll be happy to help you any way that we can.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, Holly. And now we arrive at the final questions of this incredible author interview. I'm actually going to combine them together into a three-part question because they do kind of go hand in hand with each other. So, Holly, throughout this interview, you shared with us your journey as an author, the personal connections you have with this story, the reasons you have for this story's existence, your ultimate goal and mission as an author, what you've learned about the industry and thus far. So now I am very curious. As an author, looking back on the success of Eagle, I imagine that there were moments where you want to either end early or, just stop and say, this book is good as a one off. But as you mentioned, this is a four-part series. And that is a big commitment to undertake as an indie author or as an author in general, because you never know if the first book in a series is going to land, but you have trust and faith in your readership as well as your abilities as an author. So ultimately, Holly, here are the three questions. When writing Eagle, when did you know when to stop writing? Secondly, when did you know when the story was finished? And thirdly, at the end of the day, what do you want people to take away from this book, from your writing as an author?
Well, I finish a book when my characters say stop. There's, if I try to go on after my characters have quit talking, It doesn't work. It's horrible. It's the worst writing I've ever written. It's throw in the trash. It's delete.
Mm,
So I've learned that when my characters that I'm writing about, the two main that are shouting the most, shut up, then I do. I end the book, and then if the secondary characters start shouting, I tell their story. If they don't shout, I don't write about them. I do not try to force the issue. And I just want everybody to know that they're not alone, and I'm there, and there's other authors there, there's other readers there. And where I mean there is, I've tried to get other people to understand this. Everyone has their own version of PTSD.
mm-hmm.
My PTSD for me is just as troubling and traumatic and dire, and as someone who went to war is to them, because that's the worst thing I've ever been through is what I have PTSD from. No, it's not as traumatic in general as someone who went to war. But for me personally, in my heart and in my head, it is to me, if that makes sense. So
Right.
everyone that has a traumatic event that they have gone through, and one of my traumatic events is my brother's death. And I've been there. I survived it. I have come out on the other side. I have days, don't get me wrong. I have horrible days where I miss my brother so much I can barely get out of bed. But overall, I've come out on the other side. I have a wonderful family. My husband and I, we have 5 kids. We have 2 grandkids. I still have my parents that are alive. I have nieces and nephews. So it's going to be okay. Eventually, it will be okay. And that's what I want my readers to get from my stories. Is it's going to be okay. And there's somebody there going through the same thing you have.
What a very beautiful and powerful message, Holleigh. And on that positive note, viewers and listeners, we end this incredible author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. Want to give a huge thank you to Holleigh Rae for coming on the show, making her official debut. Now, Holleigh, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect? And where can people buy a copy of your book, Eagle, and your other works? And thirdly, if people want to get connected with your and Lisa's indie author engagement community, where can they find it?
I am active mostly on Instagram. But I do have a TikTok, Facebook, and Threads. They're all under Holleigh Rae Author. I do have a website, holleighrae.com. The Indie Authors United website, you had said that you were going to put down in the comment section. It
Mm-hmm.
is indieauthorsunited.my.canva.site. And the way that you would connect with the group is you could go to that site, and down on there is a page to connect with Lisa to ask to join the group. And you can find all of my books on Amazon at amazon.com/author/Holleigh Rae.
Excellent. I will attach all those down below in the description of this video, viewers and listeners. And once more, thank you so much for joining us for another amazing, incredible author interview here on the show. A huge thank you to Holleigh Rae for coming on the show. And
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And if you would like to see her back on the show in a follow-up interview or possibly in an episode of the Writers Hub, like this video, comment, and subscribe down below. And as always, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wish you all a wonderful morning or afternoon wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you all in the next episode. Have a wonderful day, everybody.